Welcome back to another episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. Today's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be solo, so I don't have my co-host Ben today, but I really wanted to share this episode with you guys regardless, because there's a lot of stuff going on as we close out 2024, especially important for anybody interested or at least wanting to maybe explore the opportunities behind real estate investing. So what's really important to first talk about here is that this is something that takes so much just time and commitment just to learn every in and out of different types of real estate investing. And believe it or not, there are so many that you're never going to learn them. That's what I love about real estate in general, is there are so many different ways to succeed. And real estate investing is an incredible opportunity to both build passive income as well as long-term wealth. So in this episode today, I'm going to be sharing specifically 5 tips that I think are important to at least understand the basics behind as we go into 2025 and any other new opportunities hopefully present themselves in the new year. So I'm going to start right off the bat with my first tip. And this is going to be about something really, really exciting that just happened in November of 2024. So as I record this today, just literally about 2 or 3 weeks ago, this just happened. And this is super exciting. It's something that I think is going to be huge for real estate investors in 2025 and beyond, if you are specifically located here in Denver. And what I'm referring to here is ADUs. So ADUs are a common term that you may or may not have heard of. An ADU stands for an accessory dwelling unit. And in different areas around the city, regardless of where you're listening or watching the video today from, there are definitely going to be, places that are more and some less prone to seeing ADUs. And that all comes down to the zone. So Denver has been quite difficult, very restrictive when it comes to zoning for ADUs. And just recently, again, just a couple weeks ago, they actually eliminated almost all of their zoning restrictions in the city of Denver for ADUs. They're saying this is partially just because they really want to help provide additional housing since there's a shortage in the city of Denver. And I think it's just a great opportunity, again, for anybody that has a property that fits the mold where this could be an option. You have this creative ability now to make additional money on your property, either as a business. And when I say business, meaning a short-term or a mid-term rental, depending on where you're located exactly and what's allowed. But also you can look at it from the perspective of just adding additional square footage to your house that's very usable and very desirable if you ever do decide to sell. This is an example of value add. I love value add because it's an area of real estate investing and really just real estate in general. You have the opportunity to get more creative and just really identify certain things about a property that could be improved and to get the highest potential use of that space to create or at least improve upon the value that you're providing in that space. So value add is something you definitely need to learn more about if you're not that familiar with it. And I think this first tip today, just about leveraging these opportunities when they present themselves. A great example would be ADUs right now in Denver. So if you guys have questions actually about ADUs or just want to talk through any of this with me one-on-one, feel free to reach out. I actually just sent out an email newsletter a couple weeks ago, right when this happened. And I really went into depth on a lot of the different specifics. As an example, you have a certain amount of feet you have to be off of the lot lines. There has to be a separate meter to this second structure, this ADU. This is some different things like that that also were released when this all happened. And I'd love to share it with you. So if you guys do, feel free to reach out. And right now I want to just before I continue on to tip number 2, also just mention that you do have to be very specific on where you're doing this as far as, what part of the state that you might be in Colorado. Denver is now allowing these. There's other areas like Arvada that have always been more prone to this. And one way that you can kind of on an easy, without having to dig too deep, you guys are anywhere where you have unincorporated parts of your county. So for example, here in Denver, we have Arvada. Some of Arvada is in unincorporated Jefferson County. Usually when you have unincorporated counties, those are areas with less restrictions and are usually going to be your best bet when it comes to finding locations that you can either do short-term rentals and take advantage of building an ADU like I'm talking about, or just in general with ADUs. So feel free, guys, again, to do a little more homework on your own, but definitely look into unincorporated parts of counties. All right, so going into tip number 2, this is one of my favorites. This is something that I learned a few years ago through a really really educational and valuable resource online known as BRRRR. So BRRRR has a podcast. It has several books. I really enjoy Brandon Turner, who used to be the host and the main guy behind a lot of the BRRRR content. They have since switched it up. There's actually some different people now running the content. But anyways, you guys check out BRRRR. But there's a term that Brandon Turner that I just mentioned had. I believe he's the one that actually came up with the phrase of this, and it's the BRRRR strategy. So BRRRR, you can think of like being cold, BRRRR. It sounds like it's spelled, but with a couple extra R's. So it's the BRRRR. So 4 R's. BRRRR. The BRRRR strategy is really cool because it stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So the first letter of each of those is what makes up the BRRRR acronym. I'll say it one more time for you guys, just so you can kind of get this in your heads. So it's the BRRRR strategy, which is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So I'm just going to run through each of these just so you understand. So obviously buy, you want to find a property that's going to be a good investment, something that has some fixing up to do, some value add, but the value add projects that need to be done are going to be hopefully fairly cost sensitive and also just be more manageable things you can do to the home that aren't going to be high risk and also not going to just really beat you up. So, a few examples of this would be, maybe converting a extra room into a conforming bedroom, meaning that the room now has a full wall, door, closet, and an egress window. That would be one great way just to add an additional conforming bedroom to a house. So you can usually find homes like this. Just on this quick side note, if you search for, let's just say, 2-bedroom homes, and you make the minimum square footage higher than normal, then that's a good indication there might be a room that's making up a lot of that extra square footage that might be able to be transitioned into another bedroom. So little side note there, but buy, again, buy. The first R is rehab. So as soon as you buy, you're going to just go in there, you're going to rehab, you're going to rehabilitate, you're going to do whatever you need to do to fix up the place. Once you've done that, you're now able to rent it. And just another quick side note, if this was a rental to begin with, you're going to also be able to have rent growth here because you're providing a nicer product to the renter. So if you're getting $1,500 a month that's what the sellers were getting when you bought the home, maybe now you can do some renovations. And then once you go to start renting it, instead of that, you might be able to get $2,000, a higher monthly rent, which is known as rent growth, which is another great way to improve your passive income when this becomes a cash flowing rental property. So that's the second R, rent. So far we have buy, rehab, rent. So next you're going to have refinance. And refinance is cool because what this means is you're going back to the bank and you're refinancing the mortgage you put onto this home, the loan you took out. When you took out the loan, it was at a dollar amount that was what the home was valued at. Now you've rehabbed it, and now you've even rented it. Now we go to refinance it. You can show that you've made improvements. You can show that it's worth more. And by doing so, you can now have a larger chunk of larger value put on the house. And by doing so, your minimum that you have in the home's loan, since that home is now worth more, you're able to take some of that additional equity out of the home. And that's what this last R is, which is going to be repeat. So you start small, you do this whole entire process. And when it comes time to refinance, you're able to pull some of that equity home and use that as your down payment to buy the next. And you're able to basically just create this system that is very replicatable, and if done properly, can be one of the most fast track ways to building significant wealth through real estate. So again, long answer there for you guys on tip number 2, but that's what the BRRRR strategy is. I've got a lot of other great content on this on my website. So if you guys haven't checked that out yet, definitely look into it. It's just adamsellsdenver.com. So check out that, and let's move on now to tip number 3. So tip number 3 is what I like to call house hacking. And the most easy way to do this is with multi-unit properties. So right now, you're actually able to get a loan on up to 4 units, and that's considered a residential, regular type of loan. Once you go above 4 units, it becomes more of a commercial loan. because that's considered a mid or even a large multifamily property. And the way they value the property, everything is done in a different manner after that. So you want to always be only looking for 1 to 4 units. If you're out here in Denver, a 4 unit, it's hard to come by. And if you do find one, it could be a lot of money, maybe even 1.5 million. So it might be easier to do this even as an out-of-state investment strategy. So you also could be looking into more affordable markets. One example would be Tulsa, or even potentially Phoenix, Tucson, Arizona, places like that. But the way that the house hack works, so this is, again, one of the best ways for beginners, involves when you buy a property with up to 4 units, live in one, you rent out the other 3. So that doesn't have to be a 4 unit. For example, if you did a triplex, you'd live in one, you rent out the other 2. You guys get it. But the beauty of this approach is that you qualify for residential financing, which often has a lot better terms than commercial loans. So again, once you get above 4 units, that's when it becomes that commercial. But the even cooler part about this is that your tenant's rent can usually cover most, if not all, of your mortgage. So one really cool thing to think about here is this is a great short-term initial way to kind of jump into the real estate investing game. You're going to, this is a game. You're going to just have all these different plays throughout your career. This is a great one to get started. So what you're going to be doing here, again, is let's just say you buy a fourplex, you rent, you live in one. So that's one of the parts. In order for it to be a residential loan with the best terms, they are going to require it to be your primary residence. So that's a big part of this house hack strategy. So that's why you're going to want to be living in 1 unit, and then with the other 3, charging rent and hopefully covering that entire amount that you're paying for your monthly mortgage. Pretty simple, but definitely a great strategy. You guys, one last thing on this one is it does have a little bit of sacrifice. You might not want to have 3, people living around you that you have to kind of be the landlord and kind of oversee everything. But you got to keep your eye on the prize, keep your eye on the bigger picture, and realize it's a short-term sacrifice for an enormous reward at the end. So you guys, this is definitely just great to check out. I'll leave you with one last tip on this part of the house hack talk, is that you could also, after 2 years, you can sell that, or you could also then get creative on with your loan after being at your primary residence for 2 years. There's some other strategies that you can possibly take advantage of. So Ben, my co-host on the show, Ben would be a great resource to ask about more specifics on that. But that's also just something to keep in mind, that this doesn't have to be a forever thing. After a couple of years, you hopefully can at that point transition into maybe living in a different place. All right. So next, but definitely not last, so this is the 4th tip I want to share with you guys, and that's on emerging neighborhoods. So being very just conscious of, for example, we'll talk about Denver here, how it has changed over the years, how it's going to continue to change. As a 40+ year Colorado native and Denver local, growing up here, and I remember, for one, Golden being nothing special at all, being just this kind of hole in the wall little mountain town, the town on the beginning of the mountains, kind of just like drunk cowboys at the bar, just really a complete 180 from what it is today in most senses. But this is an example where back 25, 30 years ago, I personally did not see Golden turning into what it is today. Nowadays, it is hands down one of my favorite parts of Denver. Incredible walkability, incredible place to live, incredible place just to call home, just to have as part of Denver. So that would just be one quick example. But more importantly, I would like just to give you a few that I see now as great opportunities moving forward into 2025 and beyond. So this could be great as potential places for you to keep your eye on when it comes to investment opportunities as well. And an example would be Edgewater. So if you guys don't know where Edgewater is, you have Sheridan Boulevard, which basically goes north-south. It is on the western edge of Sloan Lake. So between Colfax and 38th Avenue, you have Sheridan Boulevard there with Sloan Lake on one side. On the other side, you have a good chunk of that area is Edgewater. And as you can imagine, Highland, Sloan Lake, all of this area is just becoming so popular, so expensive. It's just slowly pushing people further out to then also become a similar, very in-demand, popular area. And Edgewater is poised to just be that perfect place. And it's already seeing this because it's just slightly west and it's bordering Sloan Lake. So Edgewater is a great opportunity, I think, to identify some homes. One negative to Edgewater is pretty small. It's mostly just single family homes, 1940s, 1950s vintage. Another example, though, of just kind of these opportunities is going a little bit further west from Edgewater into Wheat Ridge. And Wheat Ridge is where I grew up, and I've always loved Wheat Ridge, mainly because it's in this very limited amount of space between downtown Denver and the mountains. Unlike Aurora and Brighton, Reunion, places on the north and to the east of Denver, where you have endless amounts of land to continue to grow and develop and expand, in Wheat Ridge, Edgewater, Lakewood, since you're in this area that's already been developed and you're limited, you can't expand or grow anymore to the west or to the east. It's just, I think, in an area that's just going to have that supply and demand where that's going to work to your favor, and it's going to be more and more sought after as we go on. And not to mention, you're so much closer to the mountains, and it has a slew of other things that are the reasons why it's one of the better places in all of Denver. Finding places like that, though, that have something unique about it that is going to be impossible to change in the future. All right. And then last but not least, my final tip is just to build a strong team. You can't do this alone. And that goes especially when you're talking about real estate investing, because there are so many moving pieces, so many skill sets, so many specifics and things that really you want to have an expert handling. I'm not the best plumber, so I'm not going to necessarily completely redo a bathroom and do that myself. I'm going to hire the best plumber that I know that's going to give me a good price, and I know he's going to do quality work. Even if you're deciding that you don't want to self-manage, you want to have a property manager. Again, having that person on your team that you trust, has your best interests at heart, and is just a great member of your team. So building a team, I think, is one of the things that you can't do overnight. It takes time. It takes building relationships with people. And it's just something, though, that is really going to help you either make a great deal or potentially lose out on a deal that doesn't pan out, or maybe you can lose some money. So having that team is incredibly important. And I think, even though it's my fifth tip, could easily be tip number one as far as the most important. So definitely think about that and make sure you guys are always improving upon your team and finding the best of the best for every role. You guys, that's it. There you have it. 5 tips to help you succeed in real estate investing in 2025. Again, whether it's taking advantage of new ADU rules, leveraging that BRRRR strategy, house hacking your way to wealth. There's just really no shortage of opportunities in this exciting industry. And I just hope this episode gave you guys a little bit of insight and just inspired you to take the next step in your real estate journey. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe. And more than anything else, the only way the show grows is by sharing it with other people that you think might get value out of it. So if you have any friends, anybody that you think would enjoy learning about real estate investing and getting some of these actionable tips as they go into 2025, share the show with them. And if you guys would love to connect with me one-on-one and talk through any of these in more detail and maybe, throw some different ideas at each other, you can schedule a free 30-minute real estate strategy session. Check out my website at adamsellsdenver.com. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I look forward to sharing an all-new episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast with you next week. See you then.